we find that Jacob is leaving Israel or Bethel, and where is he headed? Well, he's leaving Beersheba, actually. Where is he headed? And why? Somebody's trying to kill him. Who's trying to kill him? His brother, of all people. So brotherhood has not always manifested brotherly love, right? Well, Jacob, he and his mother, Rebecca, somewhat initiated the problems by stealing the birthright. And Esau says that after his father, Isaac, has died, he is going to kill his brother. He evidently has verbalized that, and so Rebecca comes up with a plan saying, we don't want him to marry any of the Canaanites. We need to send him back home. And so he's en route. And he came to a certain city, and there, as he pillowed his head, he had a vision. Angels of God ascending up to heaven and also descending from heaven. And God had promised to be with him. And in what city is that? What area? Not city, but what's the name of that place? Not there. Not where he's had that vision. And now you remember he said this is the house of God, the gate of heaven. So he called the name of that place Bethel. Bethel, which means what? House of God. House of God. We also made a lot of connection with house of God being the gate of heaven. That's an interesting thing. The house of God today is what? The church. And where are the saved today? In the church. The gate of heaven then. Well, okay, so he is encouraged by that. And so he goes on. We come to chapter 29. And we go that in 29, 1 through 8, Jacob arrives at a well. Then Jacob went on his journey and came into the land of the people of the east, and he looked, and by the way, this was about a 450-mile trip. So that's a fair piece when you're walking. And he looked, and behold, a well in the field, and lo, there were 3 flocks of sheep lying by it, for out of that well they watered the flocks, and a great stone was upon the well's mouth. And there were all the flocks gathered, and they rolled the stone from the well's mouth, and watered the sheep, and put the stone again upon the well's mouth in its place. When Jacob comes there, he says to them, my brethren, whence be ye? And they say, of Haran are we. Haran's up at the top, you remember, of Canaan, over to the right just a little bit in that fertile crescent. And he said unto them, know ye Laban, the son of Nahor? Now who is Laban to Jacob? That's his uncle. That's his mother's brother, right? And they said, we know him. And he said unto them, is he well? And they said, he is well. And behold, Rachel, his daughter, cometh with the sheep. Okay, she's taking care of the sheep. At least she's bringing them down there to be watered. That gets his attention. Okay, here is a woman that I want to meet. She's coming down here. Looks like he wants to get rid of these other people. And he said unto, and he said, lo, it is yet high day, neither is it time that the cattle should be gathered together. Water ye the sheep and go and feed them. Sounds like he's trying to get them to go on. That's kind of a strange statement for a stranger to come in and say that. But they tell him, we can't water the sheep yet. Why not? We want to wait till everybody gets here. We don't want to be taking this stone, rolling it off, rolling it back on, rolling it off. So we waited for everybody to come, and then we watered the sheep. And they said, we cannot until all the flocks be gathered together, until they roll the stone from the well's mouth, then we water the sheep. Okay? Well, while he's speaking with them, Rachel comes with her father's sheep, for it says she kept them. Now in chapter 29, 9 through 12, we have Jacob meets Rachel, and he goes to Laban's house. That was his destination. And so now then, again, I think you can see that in the timing of this, the providence of God, right? And I still believe in the providence of God. Maybe some hints on marriage especially. We ought to be praying that the people we marry would be people that would help us go to heaven. And God can make things happen for us, right? And now that's not, if you didn't get who you wanted, don't blame that on the Lord, though, right? Maybe it might be my spouse did not get the one that my spouse wanted. When Jacob sees Rachel, the daughter of Laban, he rolls the stone from the well's mouth, and he waters the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. So he's taking a lot of initiative here. I don't know if he has anybody with him that is helping him in some of this. It doesn't tell us. But notice what happens in verse 11. And Jacob kissed Rachel and lifted up his voice and wept. What is Rachel to Jacob? Cousin. So I jokingly tell the students at the time here, kissing cousins. But you do have to remember Abraham married his half-sister, right? When you think about it, when creation ensued, somebody had to marry relatives, right? Now later on that will be forbidden in the book of Leviticus. But anyway, and Jacob tells Rachel who he is, and she runs to tell her father, okay? Someone from the family is here. They haven't seen, obviously, in a long time. So Laban, he runs out to meet him. He embraces him and kisses him. So kissing is not always as we think of as kissing like on a date, but rather it's a form of greeting, right? And so it's not like, hey, I'm madly in love with you and I've kissed you for that. So the kissing cousins, that could have been a form of greeting. But he brings him home to his house, and he told Laban all these things which had happened. Well, Laban says, well, you're my bone and my flesh. What does he want him to do? Well, first he said, I want you to stay with me. I want you to stay here. And he stays there for about a month. But then Laban's going to put him to work now, right? He said, well, he's been working, I guess, because he said, even though you're my relative, should you be serving me for naught? In other words, you need to be paid. Tell me, what shall thy wages be? Here's his opportunity. Well, Laban has 2 daughters. We know one of them is whom? Rachel. Who's the other one? Leah. Okay, he's got Rachel and Leah. The Bible says that Leah was tender-eyed, but in contrast, Rachel was beautiful and well-favored. What does tender-eyed mean? Maybe, I don't know if you have another. You're not going to get into all that? Okay. Well, maybe we don't need you to get into that, because I wasn't thinking evidently what you're thinking. Okay. I think of it as she's a little more homely than was Rachel. I don't know that she was ugly, but she wasn't as beautiful as was Rachel. And so Jacob is enamored with whom? With Rachel. And so he makes a deal with Laban. And matter of fact, the Bible says Jacob loved Rachel and said, I will serve thee how long? 7 years for Rachel, thy younger daughter. What if someone today had to work 7 years for his spouse? I read an article, I think Brother Robert Taylor Jr. wrote it. He said, that would be good. He said, but that's longer than what some marriages today last. But he loved her to the point, in other words, he wants to marry her. He loves her this much that I'm willing to work 7 years for the woman that I love. So this is a great love that he has for her. Well, Laban says, it's better that I give her to thee than I should to another, so abide with me. Here's an interesting statement. It says in verse 20, and Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed unto him but a few days, for the love he had to her. That's a beautiful statement, isn't it? In other words, it wasn't long and drawn out. Now, if you hate something, that's a long time, isn't it? But if you love something and you see this is what I want, Paul says to the Thessalonians that he was talking about how he had treated the Thessalonians around them. He said, as a nurse cherished her own children. Now, nurses are supposedly known for tender, loving care, right? That's one of the reasons, I guess, they get into the profession. They care about people. But what if it's your own child? And you're taking care of someone and it's your own child. Well, then you'll do that. It's not a burden to you to take care of your own child. Why? You love that child, right? Jesus said, if you love me, what will you do? And he also says in the book of 1 John, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments, and my commandments are not what? Not grievous. It's no longer do I have to, but I want to, you see. And you're willing to go the second mile. Why? Because you love Jesus. And if you love Jesus, well then whatever God has told me to do, I want to do that. I have an idea that you're here this evening because you want to be here, not just because you have to be here. Well, I guess some people not here because they felt like I don't have to be here. But if I love God, I'm going to want to do all I can do. So love is a motivator. Love is a motivator. So he's working now. He's looking forward to, no doubt, the wedding day and getting married. Well, he worked 7 years, but now then in verses 21 through 30, Laban deceives Jacob. And Jacob said unto Laban, give me my wife, for my days are fulfilled. And he wants to perform then as a husband to her. And Laban gathered together all the men of the place. They made a feast. And in the evening he took Leah, his daughter, and brought her to him. And he has relations with her. And Laban gave unto his daughter Leah Zilpah, his maid, for a handmaid. Came to pass then in the morning, it was Leah, not Rachel. And he said to Laban, what is this that you've done? Didn't I serve you 7 years for Rachel? And what's his excuse for this? Okay, it's not in our custom to let the younger get married before the elder. He could have told him that 7 years earlier, right? Makes you wonder, why would Laban do that? The Bible doesn't tell us. But it sounds like he's thinking Leah may not have as many opportunities as Rachel. And so therefore he deceived. So the supplanter, who is that? Just got supplanted, right? He's got someone, but he's married to her. Okay, he's married to her, so he's not going to divorce her. So he goes back, and now, and by the way, are there any customs like that today? That you get married by age? That is, you've got to do it in the order. Any countries like that? India is one, according to what I've been told. Anyway. And those marriages are prearranged for a long period of time. Many of them are. And I think I told you about the wedding that I attended when Rose married Moses. I still remember those names for some reason. And they didn't look very happy at all. Or at least Rose did not. She didn't look happy. And I even asked one of the men about it. I said, why is she so unhappy? What's she supposed to look unhappy? She's leaving home. And I thought, okay. But it ain't that. And he told me, he said, sometimes these people have not even met till about 2 weeks prior to the wedding. But yet the divorce rate is very low. So they make it work. They make it work. I just thought that was interesting. But anyway, marriage customs. So if he's telling the truth or not, I'd have to go back and study the customs of the time. Laban said, "It must not be so done in our country to give the younger before the firstborn, but you fulfill her week. You let her have her, you're with this honeymoon period of a week, and we will, let's see, then you can serve for me 7 other years for Rachel." So you've served 7 years really for Leah. Now you've got to serve 7 more for Rachel. But notice what happens after that week. He doesn't have to wait those 7 more years before he gets Rachel, according to the text. He marries her, then after that week, and then he serves 7 more years. I guess Laban trusted him not to just take his wives and, cut out. But Laban gave to Rachel his daughter Bilhah, his handmaid, to be her maid. He also goes in unto Rachel, and he loved also Rachel more than Leah, and served with him yet 7 other years. So he marries her and stays and serves 7 more years. So how many years did he labor for his wives? Total of 14. Now, yeah, those last 7 years might have been a little harder than the first 7. The Bible's not written to satisfy our curiosity, but you always wonder, what does Leah think? And then there gets to be this competition for Jacob's affection, for the ability to have children between these 2 sisters, Rachel and Leah. They're going to feud back and forth. Rachel is going to find out here cannot have children. Not right now. But Leah can. And so if you'll notice, in 31 through 35, Leah has 4 sons, and then she quits bearing. And when the Lord saw that Leah was hated, notice that, Leah was hated. What does it mean, hated? Okay, now it says that he loved Rachel more in the text above, right? And the Lord said when he saw that she was hated. Okay, he doesn't extremely dislike her, which is evident because she has 4 children here with him. But she's loved less. That's what it means in Luke's account. If any man come to me and hate not his father and his mother and his wife and his children and so on, yea, in his own life also, he cannot be my disciple. Now, he's not telling us that we need to extremely dislike our family, but we love them less. Because in Matthew's account of that, Matthew 10:37 following, he says, "He that loveth father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. He that loveth son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me." How can we be guilty of loving let's just put it to our children. How can we be guilty of loving our children more than we love the Lord? Well, we ought to love our children, so don't misunderstand me. But how could we be guilty? I'm sorry? We can fail to teach them, but that wouldn't be loving our children, really. But I'm thinking about, have you ever known of someone's children as they got older and they maybe got into something that was unscriptural, and then all of a sudden people changed their mind, the parents changed their mind about what they believed about a particular Bible doctrine? Maybe they get into a marriage that's not scriptural. Then all of a sudden, I've restudied that. You're not helping your family by encouraging them in wrongdoing. But, I could never do that with my children. I had a lady tell me, I preached on the oneness of the church one time down in South Mississippi when I was preaching down there. And a lady came to me, an older lady, and she said, "Oh, I'm so glad my daughter was not here." I said, "Why were you glad your daughter was not here?" But she would have been highly offended at this sermon. Now, she was raised in the church, but she had left the church and she had gone off into denominationalism. And so she would rather her daughter not hear a sermon based on the nature of the church. And I wasn't crude or unkind or whatever in it. It was just what the Bible says about the church. And so then you're guilty of loving your children more than what you love the Lord. I would hope my children would hear it, right? And have some questions about it. And I guess we could do that with we could do that for our spouse, we could do whatever. But that's when the people need to stand firm. And so I think I can understand why Jesus would say, he that loveth father or mother more than me, he that loveth son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And also even with our own children. Okay? Well, Leah conceived and bare a son, and she called his name Reuben, for she said, surely the Lord hath looked upon my affliction, therefore now will my husband love me. Notice this. She's trying to get her husband's love. I've borne him a son, Reuben. Well, she conceived again and bare a son, because the Lord had heard that I was hated. He hath therefore given me this son also. And she called his name Simeon, which means to hear. He's heard me. I think Reuben is a son, if I remember correctly. She conceived again and bare a son, and said, now, this time my husband will be joined unto me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore, his name is called Levi. What do you think Levi means? Joined. And she conceived again and bare a son, and she said, now will I praise the Lord. Therefore she called his name Judah, and left bearing. What does Judah mean? It means praise. It means praise. And aptly so, our Lord's coming from the tribe of Judah. All right, but now she ceases to bear. But in all of these children that she's bearing, she's not only rejoicing that she's having children, but she thinks maybe this is going to do what? Make her husband he obviously loves her. He's having all these children by her. But he doesn't love her supremely like he loves Rachel. And she knows that. Now Rachel gets mad. Rachel is aggravated that Leah is having children and she's not having children. Who does she blame by implication here? Her husband. This is your fault. And he gets angry at her. And when Rachel saw that she bare Jacob no children, Rachel envied her sister. Not just jealous, she's mad. It's not, I just want I wish I could have children like my sister. No, she doesn't like it that her sister is having children. So, a little bit stronger than jealousy. And said unto Jacob, give me children, or what's the exaggeration? Or I'm going to die, else I die. This is that important to me. Well, Jacob got angry. His anger kindled against Rachel, and he said, am I in God's stead? And that's a good point there. It's not my place. Am I in God's stead, who hath withheld thee from the fruit of the womb? Well, she comes up with a plan. What's the plan? I've got a handmaid. Surrogate, in other words. I want you to basically marry, and he does, Bilhah, the handmaid. She said, behold my maid Bilhah, go in unto her, and she shall bear upon my knees, that I may also have children by her. If I cannot have children, well then I want my handmaid, which is she's looking at as part of my property, which is connected to me, so I'll have children through her. Notice verse 4 that Bilhah becomes his wife. Okay, so you've got polygamy here. You've got polygamy going on. And Bilhah conceived and bare Jacob a son. Rachel says, God hath judged me, and he's heard my voice, and hath given me a son. And she called his name Dan. What does Dan mean? It means judge. God's judged me. All these people are wearing names that's obvious the result of 2 women battling. back and forth. She conceived again and bare Jacob a second son. And Rachel said, with great wrestlings have I wrestled with my sister. And I have prevailed. And she called his name Naphtali. Means wrestling. Well, Leah saw that she had left bearing. So what does she do? She takes her handmaid, Zilpah. Let me tell you, this could make a movie. Okay? And it would probably be, it might even be R-rated, I don't know. But that's what's going on in this family. It's amazing how that God can use evil to accomplish his good. Because all of these are going to turn out to be what? The tribes of Israel. The tribes of Israel. And so he takes Zilpah and gives her to Jacob to wife. And Zilpah, Leah's maid, bare him a son, and said, a troop cometh. And she called his name Gad, which means a troop. And Zilpah, Leah's maid, bare Jacob a second son. And Leah said, happy am I, for the daughters will call me blessed. And she called his name Asher, which means happy. Now Leah is going to bear 2 more sons, and then she's going to bear a daughter. We've got something here, and I'm glad we've got a nurse in our present that can give us some medical advice here. It has to do with mandrakes. All right. And Reuben went in the days of the wheat harvest and found mandrakes in the field. Does anybody have anything besides mandrakes? Or maybe a footnote or something on mandrakes? Okay. Yeah. What they think, anyway. Some dictionaries call it love apples. A love apple, of all things. She brought them unto her. So Reuben went in the days of the wheat harvest and found mandrakes in the field, brought them unto his mother Leah. And then Rachel said to Leah, give me, I pray thee, of thy sons mandrakes. Why does she want them? Because she believes they're going to help her conceive a child. And she said unto her, it's a small matter that thou hast taken away my husband, and wouldest thou take away my son's mandrake? And Rachel said, therefore he shall lie with thee tonight for thy son's mandrakes. When you read this, because note what, again it said, and Jacob came out of the field in the evening, and Leah went out to meet him and said, thou must come in unto me, for surely I have hired thee with my son's mandrakes. And he lay with her that night. This is not an act of lust. This is an act of, I want more children. And now you've got to provide me with this. Again, R-rated, basically, when you think about it. But this is still within the family. I mean, this is odd to us, but it's polygamy. Well, we don't have a record of it, if he is. But you know what God is doing? He's developing the 12 tribes of Israel. Because Jacob's name will be changed to Israel. And God hearkened unto Leah. I don't think necessarily that the mandrakes go to Rachel, don't they? And she conceived and bare Jacob the 5th son. And Leah said, God hath given me my hire. And that's what it was hire. Because I have given my maiden to my husband. And she called his name Issachar, which means to hire. And Leah conceived again and bare Jacob the 6th son. God has endued me with a good dowry. Now will my husband dwell with me, because I have borne him 6 sons. And she called his name Zebulun, dwelling. And afterwards she bare a daughter and called her name Dinah. Out of all those boys, finally there's a girl, right? Finally there's a girl. My family's been the other way around. I've got a daughter who had 3 daughters, one of which had 2 more daughters. And then there's Anna, my daughter. So Ron's had it rough, hasn't he? Finally, though, come March the 10th, supposed to be a boy born to them. And God remembered Rachel, and God hearkened to her and opened her womb. So verses 20 through 24, a son is born to Rachel. And she conceived and bare a son, and said, God hath taken away my reproach. And she called his name Joseph, and said, the Lord shall add to me another son. Joseph means adding, A-D-D-I-N-G. So they've got all these children. There's going to be one more is going to be born. Who's that going to be? Benjamin. And he's going to be born to whom? Rachel. She will die giving birth to him, right? I wonder if that's what Paul means over in Galatians to somewhat when he says, a Hebrew of the Hebrews. Benjamin, you see, he was a Benjamite. Saul was, from the tribe of Benjamin. He didn't come from a handmaid. He came from Rachel, the one that Jacob wanted to marry. So Joseph and Rachel, you see, Joseph and Benjamin would be of Rachel. Well, there's a new contract now with Laban. Okay, I have all these children. He's got all these well, it wouldn't be his grandchildren, would it? Yes, it would be, because that's his daughter. Yeah. Great nephew. Yeah, okay. Hey, I'm confused. They're related. All right. I can't keep up with my family, much less theirs. So Jacob says, give me my wives and my children, for whom I've served thee, and you let me go. You know that I've the service I've done. Well, he says, I don't want you to leave. Now, why does he not want him to leave? He's working, and not only that, ever since you've come, I'm prospering. I know that God is making me prosper because of you. Appoint me thy wages, and I will give it. And what does he say that I will work for? He doesn't want money necessarily. He says, I need to build my own herd or flock. I guess you don't have a herd of sheep, do you? A flock of sheep. And so he says, everyone that is spotted or speckled, that'll be mine, right? And everything that's not will be yours. And we're going to separate them so that there's no crossbreeding. Is that fair enough? That's fair enough. But Jacob does something that's rather significant and odd. When the stronger cattle came, what does Jacob do? He takes some poplar limbs, branches, peels them, puts them in the watering trough or the feeding trough where they are, and when they drink of that water, the stronger ones are when they mate with these, and the stronger cattle are becoming Jacob's. Now that gives me, if you can explain the mandrakes, maybe you can explain this. I think God just intervenes. This to me has to be God intervening. There's no science to it, I don't believe, that a sheep could look upon something and whatever it looks upon, that it will bear that. Adam Clark, I thought, had a kind of a silly comment on it, that sometimes even women, whatever they have seen, that, be off on their offspring. Well, that's not true. I don't believe there's any science to that. But he put 3 days' journey between them. So he took those green poplar and hazel and chestnut trees and peeled them. And then when the stronger, so he's getting the stronger cattle. But when the cattle were feebler, that's Laban's. So the subplanting hasn't quit yet. We got a lot of conniving going on here. And the man increased exceedingly and had much cattle and maid servants and men servants and camels and donkeys. Now then, in chapter 31, you have Jacob returning to Padan Aram in the first 21 verses. What's going on is that Laban's sons don't like this. They see that Jacob is getting more wealthy. They are getting the feebler cattle and so on. And so therefore they spoke against him. Jacob hears this, and he has a discussion now with Rachel and Leah, and he can say, you see what your father is saying. It is time for us to leave because evil is going to happen to us. He's changed my wages. Laban has been also taking advantage of Jacob. And it's time for us to take our cattle and to get gone. So they agree with this because they said, that which he's been stealing from you, he's stealing from us. Because it affects the family. So they agree with him, and so they get out in this chapter. They leave. Laban doesn't know they're gone. Do you remember how long it takes before he learns of it? At least 3 days, right? And so he pursues after them. And it takes him 7 days, I think it is, to catch up with him. And but what does Rachel take in addition to their belongings? His idols. And so she steals away his idol that he has. And so he pursues after them. And so he learns of that. So Laban pursues after them, and that's verses 22 through 35. He overtakes him, and he says, what is this that you've done? Well, I would have had a feast for you. And we would have had a great time. I could have kissed my grandchildren, and I would have sent you on a farewell. I don't know that would have happened. But not only that, why did you take my gods? That's it. Why did you take my gods? And Jacob gets somewhat angry with him. He says, I didn't steal your gods. Whoever you find has stolen your God, let them die. Let them be put to death. He didn't know Rachel had them. And so he goes around looking. He goes into Leah's tent and he cannot find them. He goes into Rachel's tent and she's sitting on the camels. The Bible says the camel, King James, camel's furniture. Now, have y'all ever got any furniture made out of camel? Well, that's an old English word. It's baggage. Is what he's talking about. Saddles and things, I suppose. And so she's sitting on that, and she's got that God hid under that, but she says, please excuse me for not getting up, for I'm in the way of women and I can't get up. And so he doesn't find it. Jacob reproves him for making such an accusation. Well, he didn't know it, and he never found his God. He says in verse 38, he begins to reprove him. He says, these 20 years have I been with thee. Thy ewes and thy she-goats have not cast their young, and the rams of thy flock I have not eaten. If something was torn in the field, that is of the beast, I took the blame of it. You made me. You said that's yours. In other words, I had to pay for it. And so therefore, he says, I have served for thy daughters for 14 years, and for thy cattle 6 years. So it's been 20 years. 20 years he's been working for Laban. And now he's trying to get back home. So Laban wants to make a covenant with him now. And they do that, and that's throughout the rest of this chapter, 31, 43 through 55. So they have a feast that night. They come to an agreement that neither one will cross over or come to the other in order to do them harm. Okay, so there's some animosity here, right? But we need to leave on good terms. That's what he's saying. And so therefore, they set up a monument, a heap of witness that they will not go to one another and do harm. So the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge between us, and Jacob sware by the fear of his father Isaac. Then Jacob offered sacrifice upon the mount, and called his brethren to eat bread, and they did eat bread and tarried all night in the mount. So they spend the night there. And early in the morning, Laban rose up and kissed his sons and his daughters and blessed them. And Laban departed and returned unto his place. But you know what? Suspension is building, because who's waiting on Laban? On Jacob. Esau's back there, and I take it there's not been any communication going on. We don't know, by the way, that Rebekah's still alive at this time, because I don't think the Bible mentions her. Commentators think maybe she's died. Little did she know, if that's the case, that when she sent her son away, that's the last time she would have seen him. But anyway, it's going to build, and we're going to, Lord willing, get into that next week then and see the reunion between Esau and Jacob and what happens. All right?